Okay, hello. Welcome back to my channel. In this case, I'm going to talk about this topic, intellectual sophistication. Let's see how it goes. I corrected the audio. I had already recorded it, but now I think I have better audio. So the first thing I want to say is this is in honor of Michael W. Ferguson, who passed away some time ago, and he created um, this term to mean that it's a combination of IQ, intellectual discipline, objectivity, and erudition. Of course, this is his definition, it's nowhere else. And I'm going to explain and try to expand on these topics to see if I agree with any of his of the topics he was interested in, because also he touched another topic, which was erudition, which is something that is also related to intellectual sophistication, is more or less like polymathy and knowing a lot of topics. Maybe wisdom can also be used, but that's kind of different also. So let's start with IQ. IQ correlates to intelligence in low scores, but it doesn't correlate in high scores. And the reason is because low scores tend to evaluate the failure of basic concepts that everybody should know. And when it's high, it means that the person is good at that specific task. But because intelligence is so vast, the pen and paper test will not cover all the topics or all the abilities that intelligence should encompass. So I think that the very definition or the very purpose of the initial IQ tests were to detect exactly that deficiencies in cognitive abilities, so that kids wouldn't waste their time on the schools that were too advanced or too difficult. Some people think that the opposite is also true, that if it's too high, that it's an indication that the person is too intelligent and shouldn't follow the normal path for the average individual in a school, but would be a little bit more revolutionary than that and say that the entire school system is based on industry and high specialization is not necessarily for people that have a lot of backgrounds with different topics in mind. So let's go back to IQ here. I explain that it's like IQ and intelligence. The correlation is like trying to find a pin in a haystack. If you're intelligent, the IQ test is only going to indicate a small portion of that intelligence, and it's going to be hard to distinguish it. Whilst if it's a pin on a contrasting color, contrasting from the pin's color, for example, a white floor and the pin is black, then it's going to be easier to distinguish the attributes you're measuring in that case, because it's just so obvious. It's highlighted, and there's nothing to rummage around. So everything is self-evident, and since it's so basic that everybody should know. For example, arithmetic, and if arithmetic as a concept, not necessarily the symbology, but the concept is not there in after a certain age. Some people might believe, like psychologists might believe, or psychometricians might believe, that the kid is suffering from some mental cognitive disability. So let's see. Then we have the idea that pen and paper tests cannot measure all the things that humans can do with their hands and minds. So that's not going to satisfy the idea, the measurement of intelligence. I'm talking about the IQ test, and then the mistakes to get a low score on an IQ test are so basic that they really denote lack of intelligence. So they do, low scores on IQ tests do indicate low intelligence, while high IQ high scored on IQ tests only indicate that they're good at those specific tests of logic, working memory, long-term memory, short-term memory, puzzle solving, visual, audio. I don't think that's that much of audio processing, but that's also lacking. So, like I said, you would have to test a lot of stuff, a lot of aspects of human ability to be able to test completely intelligence. So that leads us to intelligence. What is intelligence? Some people believe that there is no formal definition, but that's like saying love has no formal definition or a table doesn't have a formal definition. Obviously, it's an abstract concept, and we have to say that we cannot perfectly define it just like any other word, but of course there is a definition, and you can, say a lot about it. The most basic aspects of it, I'm not defining it, I'm describing it really, is the ability to solve problems, to subdivide the problems into many chunks. The execution algorithm, after a while, after experience, has to become better. So instead of becoming worse, like at solving the problem, over time, you have to become better. And that's why experience and specialization works in human societies. And then you have tinkering, what Nikola Tesla was good at. He wasn't good at, technical, scientific knowledge, but he was really good at tinkering. That's what gave him a huge advantage over other people, and that's why a lot of people attribute to him high intelligence, because he was good at tinkering, which is one of the best abilities that humans can do if they use trial and error method of learning, which is the best. Then there's contrarianness or contrarian attitude, rebelliousness and bravery. Why? I mean, it's not always the case, but if they lived among other intelligent individuals, they would not seem contrarian or rebellious. But since other people are saying inane things, so they have to defend truth and logic and consistency. So as a side effect, they are contrarian, the side effect of living among not so brilliant people. And brave, of course, because if they go against the current, they're going to face a lot of conflict. Loneliness, not necessarily, like I just said, if they live in a society where they are appreciated and their ideas are understood, they don't feel lonely because they are understood. So that loneliness is the loneliness part, not necessarily the loneliness of physical presence. They can be among people in a concert, but everybody's just shouting senseless stuff and rocking their heads and so on. Might make them feel even more lonely being surrounded physically by people that share no values or purpose in life. And then there's the mental illness myth, where people of high intelligence are supposed to be also mentally ill, or the other way around, mental illness creates intelligence. Maybe in some very, very specific cases, but not the majority. Quite clearly, in the majority of cases, mental illness creates a barrier to intelligence. So they are intelligent despite the mental illness, and you gotta admire them. Like an example of that is not exactly a mental illness, but a physical illness. Stephen Hawking suffered from, the nervous fibro. I don't remember the name right now. ALS, right? And this is atherosclerosis or something similar. It makes the nerves not communicate correctly, and so they have problems moving. And Stephen Hawking was a miracle that he endured for so long. So that was an impediment to his intelligence. It wasn't an enhancer. So it's a myth that mental illness. Yeah, some people with schizophrenia, like Van Gogh, some people say he was schizophrenic, or other artists might have been that way, or autistic in the high intelligence sense, the Asperger syndrome. Some of them might have been, but there's no evidence. The Asperger has been around as a term for a few decades, and before that it was difficult to diagnose them with that. So in hindsight, some people think that maybe Albert Einstein was a genius with also Asperger's. But again, this is the minority. The great majority probably aren't. And for those who have a mental illness and also are highly intelligent, the mental illness serves as an impedance, not as an enhancer. Okay, so then we have general characteristics of an intelligent person that again I don't. This is not a description. This is what I have observed. This is not a scientific data. This is what I personally have observed that correlates with intelligent people. They are accurate, willing to spend more time on problems that require it, not easily seduced by easy answers and by logical pleasure. So stoicism. So they, there's a party, they don't go there because they know it's a waste of time, even though they could make some friends there. But low probabilities, they stay at home. So this is kind of a nerdy kind of way of explaining it, but it could be anything. It could be just like the typical, carrot and stick, manipulation that marketers use. They would say, no, this is not going to affect me because, I'm not that stupid. So they avoid those kinds of content on the internet or on TV and mainstream media. Abhors dishonesty in all forms. The typical intelligent person will tell you very quickly when a dishonest person is around and trying to manipulate for his or her advantage. Leverages instincts and intuitions, not not allows it to take control of him or her, right? So the opposite would be kind of misdemeanor and at the expense of the individual. And then inevitably brave, as I already explained, because society demands a certain conformity in the person that knows that there are better answers and better paths for life, particularly for the personal life of the person in question, is going to not be happy with what mainstream society offers, which is presumably a society of average intelligence. And then we have Bloom's taxonomy, which is the way we learn. We first memorize. I have nothing against memorization. I use Anki, which is Anki in Japanese means memorization. And it's a technique to, repeat concepts over a certain period of time. It's called spaced repetition to allow certain concepts to enter the mind and then stay there. And after a while, the mind erases it if it's not encountered again. So the spaced repetition system allows a certain intelligent kind of algorithm that makes you review not linearly, but you could say exponentially at farther in time, longer times in every occasion, as every step is taken. So it's it's a good way, but most schools are based on memorization, and you just pass the maybe at most understand step, and they don't pass to apply, analyze, evaluate, which is becoming a teacher basically, or presenting something and being more authoritative, and then create something with the knowledge, which is the most important part, and which makes you a useful person in society. To create something is the ultimate goal of education, but of course the student, most students don't reach that level, in part because of lack of intelligence, if I might say that. It's not very popular to say that, but also because of the the school system doesn't reward that. It rewards just memorization, filling in the blank, as you may have experienced in your own school. And yeah, I mean, there's also time management and all sorts of passing certain tests, certain standard tests that governments use for standardization. If they didn't have that, it would be difficult to communicate ideas and know more or less the level of certain people to employ them and so on. So I'm not being too harsh on them, but I understand their perspective. But the more personalized, the more vivid an education is, the more it will look like this. The Bloom's taxonomy. It will start with memorization, then understanding, like checking students understand by querying them, and then making them apply that information, maybe teaching. But here you can evaluate what other people create or you yourself. So self-evaluation, analyze other texts, compare them, and see from different perspectives, and then finally do your own stuff and allow the things that you created be evaluated by others. So you can see it's not exactly a pyramid, because once you create, you can be evaluated and analyzed, and some people might apply your own ideas. So it's not linear like this and from bottom to top, but it can go for different levels, just like the Maslow's hierarchy, which we will see. But the idea is that most of the time maybe it will look like this. It will be mostly remember, then understand, apply, analyze, compare, and evaluate, and finally create. So what are the differences between these concepts? Giftedness is mostly used for kids when they are precocious, so there's an association with precociousness. They play the piano at 5, like Paganini, things like that. You can see it on YouTube, it's amazing. And of course, a lot of discipline, but a lot of genetic material. Like they come from lineages that probably played the piano for a few centuries, and they passed that. And I mean, they made a living out of being probably a musician, as an example, or a mathematician. So they were gifted, maybe because of some kind of natural talent. Then we go back to intelligence and see if the parents aren't intelligent, but the kids are. Might be Mendelian recessive allele kind of conglomeration, can we say, or unity of chromosomes when an allele is recessive. It doesn't express itself in the organism. So both parents have to have the recessive gene, the recessive allele, in a heterozygote chromosome for it to be expressed. So it could be that a lot of the parents were, had one recessive gene and then another dominant gene, but when they combine with recessive with recessive, they get the recessive expression. And remember, that has nothing to do with weak, and just that they have to combine. In Mendelian genetics, it has to combine. Both of them have to be there. So the logical operator and for it to be expressed, and then they have this probably polygenetic trait. So a lot of these recessive alleles are being expressed in. So there are a lot of coincidences for the brain to work in a more efficient way for the child to be gifted. Then there's talent, specific talents for music, for programming, mathematics, abstract ideas, painting, and so on. And then there's genius. We all know who these are, like von Neumann or Einstein or Leonardo da Vinci, these famous historical figures, Archimedes, who, they knew what they were doing. They were good at what they were doing, and they gave something back to humanity with their talents. And so that made them extremely intelligent, and that made them extremely famous. And intelligence was one of the major factors. Then high IQ plays a role, obviously. It's some part of intelligence, but it's not entirely determined by that. Some people are obsessed with this topic. I think it's just part of it. No different than doing well on a piano concert. And I would say literally literacy critique is much more indicative of intelligence than I said that in my existence part 1 video. I said that it's probably better indication to give a critique of something and view a topic from different perspectives of other people, not your own, is a better indicator of intelligence than an IQ test. Speaking to people is a better indicator. And then polymathy and erudition is the main idea of this lecture, or whatever you want to call it, is that there are some people that are dedicated to a lot of fields. I don't believe they can become specialists in all the fields they study, but most probably they're a jack of all trades, master of one. That means that they're probably like von Neumann. He was a he was a nuclear physicist, but he also knew astronomy, mathematics, obviously as a nuclear physicist, and also a statistician and biologist and computer scientist. As a matter of fact, von Neumann architecture is the main form that later people used to base their computers on, their digital computers on. So he was pretty much a genius and a polymath and a polyglot and everything that you can imagine. He wasn't without his flaws, and we will go to that later. So then refinement is kind of the logical result of having a long lifelong learning experience, and I think it also denotes some sort of culture, like or multicultural personality, and courteousness and elegance. What people will call nobility, but not nobility in the Orwellian sense, but really nobility, like a good-hearted and well-intended, and with some sort of civility. And then astuteness is the opposite, or maybe not the opposite, but the dark side of intelligence, where some sort of manipulation is going on to benefit the bearer of the intelligence, or the one that was bestowed with this intelligence. Uses it in a not so morally acceptable way. And then we have charity, charity and kindness and selflessness is a good thing and has nothing to do with intelligence, as we will see in the next slide. So here we have an angel, and then we have von Neumann, who is a well-known. I already explained who he was, right? Physicist, astronomist, biologist, mathematician, computer scientist. He created this, this diagram. I think it's a simplistic version of it, but you can see the brilliance of the design, and it's how our computers work today. Our personal computers have a CPU control unit and a logic unit, arithmetic unit, and it has all sorts of control gates that make the logic work in a very general way, because personal computers show video, you can play video games, send far away messages from to the network, and make it decide through the network card and the routers where it has to go, and so on. IP4 or IP6, don't get me started. And so this is von Neumann, initial design, and how Intel and other companies like AMD got started. They based their their designs on this, and probably other versions that were derived from this. So what's the problem with, why do I contrast von Neumann with an angel? Well, an angel might be dumb but is kind, and then von Neumann is kind of well, I wouldn't say devilish, but he wanted to bomb the Soviet Union, not with simple bombs, but with nuclear bombs. So he was a supporter of nuking Russia and back then the Soviet Union, and this would entail killing a lot of innocent people. I don't know, maybe because he was bitter because he was a Ashkenazi Jew, and he suffered from pogroms, or his pogrom or his family suffered from pogroms, the attacks on Jews and so on. I don't know what kind of resentment was in his soul, but I mean, you can already sense the morality of the person, even though he was a genius, was a little bit off. And again, obviously horrendous times. They also placed a bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and that actually killed a lot of Japanese people. So he used his genius in a way that a lot of people like me would not accept. And then there was Joseph. I don't remember his surname right now, but he opposes kind of the Manhattan Project to precisely because it was going to affect people in that didn't have much to do with the war, the World War II. Okay, so then we have the Maslow's hierarchy, and this is where unemployment has to do. And you know, how does it relate to polymathy? Michael Ferguson used to say that people were unemployed because highly intelligent people were unemployed because they were unfairly excluded, the inappropriately excluded, he said. And so I don't think it's inappropriately excluded. Is it? I think they were inappropriately excluded. They simply were. A lot of people simply don't find jobs in the same way that you don't find appropriate partners, romantic partners or friends. It's just a matter of luck. You don't know who you're going to find. You're going to find in life, and when you get a job, you find new people. You might become friends with them or not. Sometimes you don't find a job because you're not applying where you should be. It's a huge world with 8 billion people in it for now. Back in 1928, there were 2 billion approximately. So it's been increasing exponentially, and I don't want to comment on why there are so many people on the planet, but they say that's not for puritanical reasons or intelligence. And here, unemployment can apply to anybody, independent of intelligence. So you can't. It's a fallacy to say you're unemployed because you're stupid, and at the same time you're unemployed because you're smart, right? I don't remember how it's called. Is it the contrary fallacy or something like that? I don't remember the name, but you can understand how the same dimension is used to justify the exact opposite. So it doesn't make any sense. It makes more sense to say you're not employed because you're not prepared for the job that you are applying to than to say that you are not getting the job because you're so smart that nobody can understand you, and you're not going to be understood. Your employer will not understand you, or the bank will not give you a loan to start your own business. So that's not very logical to say. But I mean, the people that support this view, like Michael has passed away, so I'm sorry he cannot defend his argument, but I'm just saying my perspective. So there shouldn't be any correlation between polymathy and unemployment, and the smart person knows how to adapt. So if they don't get the exact job that they were wishing for, they can just do it for the money and adapt, because we live in a commercial world, and I cannot all the clothes you see on me are not created by me. The computer is not created by me. That even if I spent 100 lakhs, I would be able to create the computer that I'm using to present this PowerPoint presentation. Why? Because for a computer to exist, there have to be millions of people, so millions upon millions of hours spent working for the diode, for the LED, for the transistor, for the LCD display, the webcam, etc., the mouse. All these technologies were amalgamated, or placed in one single place for us, and even designers for the excellent design that has hinges that go back and forth. All of this are inventions that benefit all of us, and there's no way just one person would be able to do it. So going back to David Ricardo and other great economists that said that a pencil is not made by cannot be made by one person. A person doesn't know how to make a pencil. They would need the help of hundreds of other individuals to extract graphite, to extract the cellulose or whatever kind of wood they use for the pencil. They would have to extract for the eraser, the material, I don't know what it is, for the eraser on the back of a pencil and so on. So it's a huge amount of, even a simple tool like a pencil can demand a lot of people and man hours, right? So that's why participation in commerce is so valuable. Of course, you have to choose the people you commercialize with, and then we can go into the how the dilemma of, you know, they're immoral but they are convenient to have as commercial partners and so on. I'll get into that in another video because I don't have the time in this one. So the solution for polymath, or for anybody really, is to back to the localism. You cannot avoid being part of the land where you are born in or where you want to be. And there you can, you know, find a way to use local currencies or local accounting systems, as well as the global system to, you know, the global currency, whatever it is, or the currency on the region, to exchange. Why? Because if the global currency or the big currency, the regional currency, is in a crisis like it is right now, then everybody's going to suffer. But if there is a local economy, the local economy is going to cushion the bad effects of the crisis, right? Which will be inevitable, whether it is because of corruption, you know, bad loans, scams, wherever. There's always going to be some kind of inevitable crisis that will make people not, you know, stagnate the economy, like a recession, and then the prices will become lower. And if then people decide to, you know, the Federal Reserve or the central bank decides to decrease the interest rate of loans for dependent banks, then they will increase the amount of loans, and in the loans they will by making more loans they will create inflation, because there will be more money circulation. So it's this typical cycle that you see up and down for the economy and the value of currency. So to avoid all of those problems, to rely, you know, don't put all your eggs in one basket, to rely on the global economy for complicated things like an engine manufactured in, you know, the emerging industrialized countries like China, India, and Brazil, for complicated things like engines or computers and so on. And then for local economies, you can rely on local economies for food and shelter and things, more basic needs, like going back to the Maslow's hierarchy, to get the basics, the physiological needs. The basic physiological needs, you know, eating, shelter, and clothing to protect yourself from the environment, from the temperature and precipitations and so on. And then I don't see why, just like in the Bloom's taxonomy, I don't see why it has to be a sequential pyramid. It can be also that the love and belonging also is perceived when food, water, clothing, reproduction, and so on are being met. The needs are being met, and safety, obviously, health, and property can also be at the same. So probably the most difficult ones are self-actualization, which for an artist would be, you know, producing artworks that people wanted to watch and support you, and self-esteem or respect and recognitions from other. In my case, I don't care that much, but some people might appreciate it more, and that would be something that can be reached only if the previous needs are met. So in this case, I think that we would have to see how how to group this. I mean, you could be also self-actualized by just having water, food, shelter, and playing chess. Okay, it could happen, but in perhaps from Maslow's perspective, first you need the physiological needs, and then without those physiological needs, self-actualization cannot happen. And so, like I said, localism can probably satisfy love, belonging, safety, and physiological needs, and then the global economy can help with self-actualization, esteem, and, you know, being in a more complicated but more resourceful world. Okay, this has been all. Thanks for listening, and next time I think I'm gonna do a video about if I find the time, a video about language learning, probably Chinese, and probably about the different methods of teaching and all the caveats of revolutionary ways of thinking of education and methods in which you can hack good education even if you don't have that much money or that much resources. There's always a way to kind of circumvent the situation to your advantage. Thanks for listening and see you around.